Hey everyone, Brayden here coming to you with a breaking Disney news update, as yesterday we finally got some specifics, some actual guidelines and mandates proposed by Orange County, Florida, one of the counties that Walt Disney World resides in, detailing what measures need to be taken in order for large theme parks to reopen, and they specifically mention Disney and Universal. I'm sure by now you've seen a million videos at this point along the lines of when are the parks going to reopen? How are the parks going to reopen? What changes will be made when the parks reopen? Will we wear masks? How much hand sanitizer will be used? And up until this point, it's really all been speculation and rumor. We really haven't had that much concrete information. And I do have a little bit to add in the speculation and rumor department, what I've been hearing talking to sources over the last few weeks. But first, let's cherish this actual bit of real, concrete, official news we got here with Orange County's reopening guidelines and mandates. Looking at the proposal, this graphic floating around online is actually a screenshot of an Excel spreadsheet that was being screen shared during the Orange County Task Force's Zoom call. So I've attempted to make a more clean version here for us to look through and see all the requirements. As you can see, they've divided the qualifications for theme parks to reopen into two sections. You have the guidelines. These are the things that operationally theme parks should be doing wherever possible. And then you have the mandates. And these are the things that are required to qualify for each phase of reopening in Orange County. And this isn't something we're just seeing with the counties overseeing the reopening of Disney and Universal. This is something we're seeing everywhere. A few weeks ago, the federal government released some guidelines, a proposal as to what each state or region of the country should do and how they handle the reopening. The concept is what you have are phases, where in each phase more things are opened up. But in order to qualify for each of those phases, you must meet the requirements. So you must pass the gating procedure, and what that entails is making sure there's a downward trajectory of cases, making sure the hospitals are in good shape and able to handle more cases. Of course, as you reopen, you'll have more cases. So that's sort of how the phases are working, and that's how a lot of the states are handling it. Now, Orange County, Florida is still putting together their specific plan. It looks like they are going to have two phases to their economic reopening. That's what's in the draft before a return to normal, or the new normal, or whatever you want to call it, whenever that's going to be, probably like a year or two from now. So first, going through the mandates in order for theme parks to reopen, all employees will be required to wear face masks, the touchless hand sanitizer distributors, whether that be a machine, like what we saw at the ticket entrances before everything closed, or perhaps a table with cast members, which is something we also saw before Walt Disney World closed. Those will need to be at each of the ticket entrances, as well as at each of the ride entries and exit points. Temperature checks will need to be administered for staff prior to each shift, and if they have a temperature over 100.4 degrees Fahrenheit, they must stay home. All employees who are showing any symptoms of a respiratory illness must be advised by the business. Disney has to stay home. You need to wipe down all railings and surfaces after every use. I'm not really sure what that means, if I'm being honest. I don't know what that means. So each time someone touches a surface, someone has to wipe it. That's like physically impossible. That is not going to be possible. Maybe wipe down surfaces hourly. Maybe have a crew that's constantly circulating through the parks, each park wiping everything down, every surface as often as possible. And then we have the really interesting part. Something we've all been wondering is when Disney reopens, whenever that'll be, how many people will Disney let in with all these social distancing things that are going on right now? If you look at the guidelines, Orange County is recommending that you have tape markings every 6 feet in the queues, so people are spaced out in the park. Staff needs to regularly wipe down surfaces, what we were just talking about. Staff who's over the age of 65 needs to stay home. The thing is, if everyone is spaced out 6 feet in the queues and everyone tries to stay 6 feet apart from each other walking around the park, you really can't let in nearly as many people as Disney usually does, like a dramatic amount less than normal. So in this drafted proposal, Orange County mandates that during phase 1 of the reopening, theme parks need to cap their capacity at 50% of what it used to be, of what their capacity used to be. And I don't know about you, but half capacity still sounds like way too many people to keep those minimum safe distances. Like, that is still a lot of people. And thankfully today, the Orange County Task Force in charge of reopening everything, they gave us some more information saying, quote, theme parks and other venues of that magnitude shall each develop their own specific and unique set of guidelines following the CDC recommendations and using best practices that will protect the life, health, and safety of their employees and guests. They'll be permitted to open reopen at their own discretion with their internally determined level of safe capacities throughout the various phases. So what this means is while Orange County has these guidelines and mandates that they've put together, each of these large entertainment venues in Orlando, they're also free to go ahead and put together their own specific plan on how they're going to handle the reopening and combat the coronavirus in the meantime. Adding in more guidelines, I think it's very possible Disney and Universal opts to go much, much lower than the Orange County mandate as far as capacity is concerned. What this is to say is the Orange County guidelines we got here in the mandates, it's sort of like the bumpers on the bowling alley, right? And it's likely that Disney and Universal, they're going to push the bumpers even further in. It's sort of saying these are your guidelines, these are the limits of what you can do. You can't go over 50% capacity, but I think it's highly unlikely if Disney and Universal open anytime soon that they'd exceed like 30% capacity, maybe even less, honestly, maybe like 20% capacity. There's been a lot of talk of maybe the parks first just reopen to locals before, larger and larger groups. So you really try to limit how many people are going in the park at any given time while still getting all the employees back to work, all the cast members back into the swing of things. So that's the official news that we got. As far as when the parks will reopen, it's still really anyone's guess. I could see June. That's the target time frame I've been hearing from sources familiar with the matter. But I could also see Disney reopening next year, because the thing is, the big unknown factor is as you reopen stuff, obviously more people are going to get sick because we don't have a natural immunity to COVID-19, to this virus. So the question in mind is how many more people get sick, how fast, what can the hospitals handle, and how effective are all these social distancing measures being put in place? And the answer to those three questions will precisely determine when we can see the economy reopen in a large regard, things like Disney and tourist destinations reopen. It's really a matter of how big is that increase in new cases, how well is it managed. One other bit of info I've heard from people familiar with all this reopening business is it's likely the first thing that reopens at Walt Disney World will be Disney Springs, not one of the parks. It's a destination that's frequented by a lot of locals. It's not a theme park, so the guidelines we just went through, those things won't apply. Disney can actually test their social distancing measures, how many people they allow in, how they track people coming and going to monitor how many people are currently inside of Disney Springs. They can test out all those technologies, all those different measures before moving on to actually opening one of their parks. But even if that is the case and we see that happen, when that'll be, when Disney starts testing all this and actually opening Disney Springs, is still really anyone's guess. It could be in June, maybe even a little bit earlier, or maybe a lot later, so we'll just have to wait and see on that. I hope all you guys are hanging in there. I don't know about you, but this whole staying inside thing, it's gotten old. So here's to hoping things open back up, but safety obviously is the most important thing. You have to take your time. This is not something you want to rush. You want to keep an eye out on those three factors I mentioned. You want to see the rate of new cases as the economy begins to reopen and you lift some of these measures that have been put in place over the past month. You also want to see how are the hospitals doing and how effective are these social distancing measures. The social distancing measures we've been seeing at stores, like if you go to a store right now, you might notice when you walk in, there's someone that taps a button to log that you entered the store, and then as you exit the store, someone taps a button to log that you exited the store. So a lot of these retail stores, what they're doing is actually tracking how many people are inside the store at any given time, and if it exceeds a certain amount, then they hold you back and you wait in a line. And I think that's what Disney is going to test with Disney Springs, right? Where they see, okay, how many people are entering, log each person as they enter and leave, so they can monitor how many people are presently inside of Disney Springs down to the number. And of course, this is very easy to do once they implement it in theme parks because you scan on your way in. Of course, you probably have to scan on your way out if Disney were to do this properly, although, they do have long-range RFID readers. So I'm sure they could figure out a way to monitor exactly down to the number how many people are in the parks at any given moment, so that way they never exceed the capacity limit that they set for themselves. So it'll be very interesting to see as we monitor everything happening here. Be sure to subscribe, those notifications on. There's more content on the way, and of course, we'll be keeping up to date on all the latest news as it comes in here. I do feel like the swing of things, it's starting to come back a little bit. I do think there's going to be a lot more news in the near future, so we'll see what happens there, and I'll keep you up to date on all the latest news as we monitor what's happening with Disney, how they're going to handle reopening the parks, when exactly that'll be, and all that good stuff. I'll talk to you soon from the Mickey Mouse Magic Studio. This is Brayden. Have a magical day.